Hello, everybody. It's season. Last season was not a very good season for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Again, it ended the same way. Forget about all that. Welcome to season 3 of TML Domain Podcast. This is episode 1 of season 3, and this season we're coming in hot. And, why is season 3 going to be better than season 2 of the TML Domain Podcast? Well, for one reason,
harder, better, faster, stronger.
we're hoping that that applies to the Toronto Maple Leafs too, but harder, stronger, faster, better. This off season has been it's been different and it hasn't been different. I mean, last year in free agency, we pretty much knew what was going to happen with the Zach Hyman situation. The Edmonton Oilers had a deal done with Zach Hyman way before free agency started, and they had a deal with Jack Campbell this season way before the season started. I don't know what the NHL's policy is on tampering, but the Edmonton Oilers had a 5 year, you know, $5 million deal done with Campbell that he signed 50 seconds after a free agency opened. So the Edmonton Oilers seem to have a real hard on for Toronto Maple Leaf players. Cody Ceci, Zach Hyman, Jack Campbell. Guess what? All those guys failed miserably in Toronto, and they're not winning anything over there in Edmonton either. So you can overpay them for as long as you want to overpay them, but let's be honest. Those guys weren't getting it done in Toronto. Jack Campbell definitely was not getting it done in Toronto. Um, thank God the Leafs didn't even bother offering him a contract. You, if people say you can't keep running it back in Toronto with the same guys and expect different results. I agree with that. That's why, if the better goalie Frederick Anderson got tossed out of Toronto for putting up better stats, then you got to get rid of the guy who puts up the shittier stats. And Jack Campbell was a guy that was made to look better by the Leafs defense, and it's a defense that was good, but it got better when Giordano arrived. And the Leafs were. Let me look this up here. Let me look this up here. I want to make sure that I am correct in what I am referencing. So I want to make sure that I say this properly. Do 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 do. Uh, the Leafs defense core. I'm trying to find this real quick in real time. I should have had this teed up. Yeah, the Leafs defense group last season led the entire NHL in total combined goals above replacement and total combined expected goals above replacement. So, I did a deep dive on some of these stats, and what I'm looking at here is let me see if I can give you guys a peek at what I'm looking at here. So, what I'm looking at here is goals above expected. And this is for the playoffs last year. And Jack Campbell is far down this list. Mikko Koskinen had better stats. Ilya Samsonov, who's a who's a Toronto Maple Leaf goalie now, had better stats. Look, Dan Vladar, Pavel Francouz, Jeremy Swayman, Eric Chalgren, like Mike Smith. Like the Leafs, I mean, the Edmonton Oilers replaced Mike Smith with Jack Campbell, and look at Mike Smith's goals above expected, goals saved above expected. I mean, you just have to look at this number, and in the playoffs, it wasn't good. Now let's look at this. Andre Vasilevsky, expected goals against. No matter how you look at it, Jack Campbell is always in the middle of the pack. It's the save percentage, unblocked shots. Jack Campbell, 21. Expected save percentage on unblocked shots. You can expect whatever you want, but the reality sucks. Look, Jack Campbell, 18th. Like, you can look at all the stats you want. Jack Campbell just doesn't put up good stats. And in the regular season, we saw Jack Campbell put up some atrocious stats for months on end. And like if you want to contend, you really need a good goaltender. You really need a good goaltender if you want to contend. The Flames have Markstrom, the Vancouver Canucks have Demko, and whether you think they're a contender or not, the goalie determines certain things. Like let's say Vancouver Canucks right now were caught between a rock and a hard place. Do we go full rebuild? Do we not go full rebuild? And they couldn't. When you have Demko and net, you can never truly be horrible. When you have Markstrom and net, you can't be horrible. The Edmonton Oilers are trying to get to, where the Colorado Avalanche are, and the Colorado Avalanche, got some great goaltending last year. The guy wasn't top notch. They were still scoring goals better than most teams, but when they needed it, they got the saves. And, you know, some of the most ridiculous things I hear online are, oh, the Leafs, don't score too many goals in game sevens. That's just cherry picking one game and one stat. The Leafs were up 3-1 on Montreal. They were up 3-2 on Tampa. If your goalie can't steal you a game ever, steal a game. You can't steal a game versus the Montreal Canadiens. You can't just one game just play so good that the other team doesn't have anything on you. I mean, the Leafs in game 6 versus Tampa, Tavares scores with 8 seconds left in the second period, puts them up 3-2. That's a dagger right there. The Tampa Bay Lightning had nothing going in the third period. Go and watch the highlights of that game. The Tampa Bay Lightning were just skating around, going through the motions, and a horrible goalie giving up bad goals gave him life in that game. It's you can only do so much, right? People talk about Marner, Matthews, and all these guys, Tavares. They're putting up points and they're scoring goals. At one point or another, you need the guy to make some saves. And you can't keep losing game sevens by one goal. One day, your goalie just has to be better than the other guy. And Campbell couldn't be better than anybody. Like that, they had to move on. I like the upside of the young goalie Ilya Samsonov. He played 42 games last year for a playoff team that struggled at times. The Washington Capitals. last season struggled a little bit. They go through peaks and valleys a lot, that team. They were very inconsistent, but they were a playoff team, and he played 42 games and he put up decent stats. And, Matt Murray is not definitely not the best of goaltenders, but, you know, I live in Ontario. I live in Toronto, obviously. I live in Ontario, so I watch a lot of Sens games. And when you see how many times a goalie like Matt Murray gets hung out to dry because the team defense, not just the defense score in Ottawa is atrocious, but the team defense is so lackadaisical that he's just hung out to dry. There's one timers into open nets and tap ins, and there's only so much a goaltender can do. Like even the best goaltender in the world, you can snow angel and throw your legs up and hands up, and you could be athletic as you want, but there's only so much you can do when you constantly have to fly around. And when you're constantly sliding from side to side, doing the splits, reaching out, injuries are going to happen more. When you look at the goalies in the NHL that tend to have less injuries, that go on the IR less, are compact, reserved goalies who always tend to be in position. Puck hits them in the chest. They don't do a lot of sliding from side to side. Every once in a while, you got to be acrobatic. Yeah, that's the goaltending position. But if you constantly have to, I we saw that last year in Toronto with Mrazek. When Mrazek was calm and cool in net and he wasn't moving around too much, he was healthy and he was playing games. And there were some games where he actually stole the game for the Leafs. I remember one game against Washington, they put up like 40 something shots and he was all world. He was compact, he was in his net, he wasn't moving around too much. But then all of a sudden, if the Leafs got lackadaisical on defense and he had to do the splits and go side to side, the groin injuries were popping it up on him. So like, it's a give and take. You got to play defense. You can't let your goalie, do too much in net. But when you're looking at butterfly goaltenders who are calm, quiet in net, it seems to make sense. I've based on what I've seen, I've spent some time in the summer going over Washington Capitals games where Samsonov was good and Samsonov was bad. Um, I saw him make some great saves and keep his team in the game and win some games. He's very young. He's on a $1.8 million contract for 1 year, and there's some upside there. You know, uh, there's a lot of goaltenders out there that I would have liked to see the Leafs go after. Maybe a Ville Husso, Jake Ottinger. There's a lot of good young goalies in the game. The NHL isn't a league of super elite goaltenders anymore. There is, there's Shesterkin, there's Vasilevsky, and then there's a huge drop off after that. Um, there are some good goalies, and there's a lot of good goalies, but I would say in general, there are maybe 10 great goalies in the NHL. Two at the top are Shesterkin and Vasilevsky, but there are 32. Like, there's a lot of teams in the NHL, and there's just not enough goaltending to go around. So to say that, like, you know, you definitely need goaltending, but it doesn't have to be great. Colorado last year won with a good goalie, not a great goalie, and then this year, they let the goalie go and they replaced him with Georgiev. Now, Georgiev isn't going to put up stellar numbers. The Colorado Avalanche are going to have to play great defense around him. They're going to have to give him a lot of help. But, if the Colorado Avalanche can go out and get Georgiev as their number one goalie and still think they can contend, then I don't understand why the Leafs have to go out and get like, the best goalie in the NHL. You just need someone who's consistent. Consistency is key. If you know what your goalie is going to give you on a day-to-day basis, then you could develop a plan around it. You can establish an identity. You know how to play. And I think with Matt Murray and Samsonov, the underlying numbers were good. So the Leafs said, with these guys, we know what we can get. With Campbell, you don't know. The personality was up and down, you know, blaming himself, you know, it, the personality had to be adjusted and the game on the ice had to be adjusted, right? Like when you look at a goalie like Jack Campbell on the ice, who's 6'4", who's the same size as Vasilevsky, but makes himself look so small, and you can see why his high danger save percentage is so bad. All I remember is if the puck was in his feet, if there was a rebound, it was most probably going to end up in the net. He was great at saving shots from far, but once things got close and uncomfortable inside his crease, it was it was just I would just put down my head. He wasn't making, he wasn't the guy that was going to cover up your mistakes. So at the end of the day, what they've done with the roster is good in terms of the goaltending. Get two guys in there who can be more consistent. Not great, not elite, just be more consistent. The Leafs defense is really good, and they still haven't signed Sandin, but that's a deep defensive core. That is a deep defensive core. When you look at the Leafs opening night roster with Riley and Brody, Muzzin and Hall, Geo and Lilligren, that's a good starting six. And then behind that, you have Sandin. The Leafs signed Victor Mete, Jordy Ben. Sorry about that. There's a lot of depth there. Victor Mete can play in the NHL. He's not a top four by any means. Jordy Ben is not a top four by any means. But once the playoffs starts and things get chippy, Jordy Ben is the kind of guy you can put in there like a Zach Bogosian, who's going to go in there and he's going to hit people in the corners. He's going to play a gritty game. And up front, the Leafs bring back Pierre Engvall, which is a good signing. They add Cali Yarncrook, Nicholas Ube Kubel, who played on Colorado last year. I've seen this guy play. He reminds me a lot of he reminds me a lot of Kerfoot, just with his speed and his tenacity and stuff. I think this kid's going to be probably a little bit grittier than Kerfoot, and they add Adam Gaudette and they sign some of their prospects. I think when you look at the roster this year, the Leafs have some options. They're definitely going to add Matthews, Nyes. Uh, Nick Robertson's going to get a chance to play some minutes this year. There's a lot there. You still have Kyle Clifford, you still have Simmons. That bottom six has been completely revamped this year. I like what Camp did last year. You bring him back. Camp is going to be your third line center, and that third line of whether it's Nick Robertson or at this point, they spent $2 million annually on Cali Yarncrook. So, he's the kind of guy that can play left, right, or center. So Cali Yarncrook with guys like David Kampf and Pierre Engvall, that's an interesting third line right there. Whether you throw in guys like Adam Gaudette and Nick Robertson, and maybe they can get after the puck with their speed, they create some offense. You're not I don't think the Leafs are so much thinking about offense. They have enough offense. I think they've come to the point where, you can try to score a lot or you can just play a different type of game. Like look at the Florida Panthers. They won a lot this year. They went into the playoffs and they got swept in the second round, real easy. And what do? They go and bring in Matthew Kachuk. I think when you trade out pieces to bring in a Matthew Kachuk, you're like, yeah, we did a lot of winning last year, but we got swept in the playoffs and it didn't make a difference what we did in the regular season. So I think teams like Florida are trying to augment their game so that they're playing differently. And when you bring in a Kachuk, you're definitely playing a grittier, more pesty, like dog the puck, piss people off, get them off their game. And the Leafs have definitely added to that mentality too, bringing in Kelly Yarncrook and Victor Mete, Jordy Ben, Obey Kubel, Adam Gaudette. Um, there's a lot there that adds to that kind of mentality where the Leafs are like, okay, we have two lines that can score, and they scored in the playoffs. Marner scored, Nylander scored a bunch of great goals. Like I alluded to earlier, Tavares scored that really nice goal with 8 seconds left in Game 6 of the second period to put the Leafs up 3-2 going into the third, and one period away from closing out the two-time champs. The offense was there. The guys who were meant to produce offense created offense. Matthews scored, Marner scored, Nylander scored, Tavares scored, Kerfoot was scoring. You know, I think it hurts a little bit to lose a guy like Ilya Mikheyev. His speed and his forecheck was off the charts. What he created shorthanded was unbelievable. And to lose that hurts a little bit, but at a $5 million price tag, I'm not sure if um, his play warranted that. But overall, the Leafs have definitely um, added a lot of depth. I think they just signed Joseph Blandisi today. He's a 6 foot center that played for Pittsburgh last year. Had like 21, 22 points. He's a depth piece that could be fourth line center or whatever in terms of injuries. So they've they've definitely changed up the bottom six. What the opening night roster looks like for the bottom six is still, it, I think we'll know more once they play some preseason games. But in general, yeah, I like the approach of okay, we have the top two lines set, offense is there. Let's bring back what worked in Giordano. They brought him back. He's going to play with Liljegren. Everyone can agree on the fact that Liljegren's play went through the roof once Giordano arrived, and I want to see that for a whole season because if Liljegren can take the next step, then most probably Justin Hall becomes the piece that they can trade or let go in free agency. Um, and then we'll see where Sandin ends up this season. He's probably the seventh D man at this point, but considering he's got an agent that also represents William Nylander, and we all know what that saga was like. This is just an agent who doesn't do anything by the book. This is an agent who doesn't negotiate in good faith. He's taken, it's not just the Toronto guys. He's taken multiple clients to the brink of training camp and beyond to get the kind of money that he wants for his agent. You know, it's just it's not respectable. It's not the way you should be doing business. You can't be negotiating. You know, you can't always be like, yeah, well, my client is willing to not play. If you constantly do that, I mean, teams are just not going to negotiate with you. They're going to be like, okay, so your real negotiation is going to start when training camp starts. So we just won't talk to you until training camp starts. And then that's when the negotiations start. And then if you can't get anything started, he's going to miss the season. You can't put your client behind the eight ball. It doesn't. That's the worst way to do a negotiation. The sooner you can get real numbers on paper and um, present them to each other, the quicker you can get an idea of what they're starting at and what you're starting at, the quicker you're going to get to a place that works for everybody. So I don't understand how this agent still has a job. If I was a player, I would never have an agent like this. This is the worst kind of negotiator. And these tactics are not rewarding his clients with 10-year, 80 $880 million, 100 million. Is these tactics are getting, Nylander can be making a lot more money, but that's the way it is. So yeah, this season is definitely. I think the Leafs have really they took time to analyze the goaltending position this offseason. They went through the goaltending like they went through the bottom six forwards last year. If you remember last year in the offseason, um, there was a lot of questions about how the Leafs were going to fill out the bottom six. And then, based on some advanced analytics and just analyzing players like David Kemp and stuff like that, the Leafs filled out their bottom six with Kasha, Camp, and a bunch of other players, and it worked out. So I think this summer the Leafs analyzed the goaltending like they did the bottom six last year, and they came up with two guys that were available, um, that were cheap, and you know they're short term risks. Samsonov is on a 1 year deal, and Murray's on a 2 year deal, so you know, if it doesn't work out, you can easily move on from these guys. But I think they've done their due diligence, and like it just makes sense. I like what's going on. Uh, it's hilarious the way Oilers fans were talking about the Leafs last year, and Campbell this and Campbell that, and he's not that good. And then all of a sudden, Campbell signs in Edmonton, and my entire feed is just people making excuses for how bad Campbell was. And I'm just
Bruh. Bruh.
like, one guy's like, well, the Leafs, they don't score too many goals in game sevens. Maybe they should score more goals. Maybe the goalie should make more saves. Kawhi Leonard is laughing at you. But there's some, yeah, it's funny how Edmonton Oilers fans trash people like Cece, how bad he was in Toronto, and then they trash Hyman, and then they trash Jack Campbell, and now they're all like, they sign in Edmonton, and then all of a sudden Edmonton Twitter goes,
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
these Edmonton fans on Twitter, they start saying great things about these players once they sign in Edmonton, and then literally all you have to just go through their Twitter feed from a year ago.
That was easy.
Every time they say something good about one of those players, I look through their Twitter from a year ago, and I'm like,
That was easy.
but like, yeah. The moment the Campbell signing was announced, Edmonton Oilers fans were just like, Jack Campbell.
It's over 9,000!
All of a sudden, he became an elite goaltender. This guy's 30 years old, has never been a starter, and if the Leafs had any more, a little bit more trust in Eric Shelgren, he would have started the playoffs. Like Campbell would have lost his job to Eric Shelgren last year. The guy just came in and played steady goaltending. He saved the season. I mean, there was it was either Mrazek was hurt or Campbell was hurt or both were hurt, and Eric Shelgren came in and saved the day. I mean, like that first game, I think the first game Eric Shelgren played, one of the goalies got hurt and he had to come in and play the third period in overtime. And when I saw this guy make some saves in overtime and all of a sudden the Leafs scored,
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Jack Campbell.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Like I'm just I'm thank God I don't have to watch Leaf games with Campbell and Ned anymore. Like he was trash for 60 more than 60% of the season. And it's just me watching the TV going, like,
Bruh.
come on, man. I just every time I saw a breakaway on Campbell or, it was the Leafs were shorthanded in a key situation, and even though the Leafs had a really good penalty kill last year, the guy's stats were trash. And then, he comes out after the game and he's like, hey bud, how's it going, bud? Hey, good save, bud. Tapping everybody. It's crazy how there's a fan base in this town that wants tougher, grittier, like Wendell Clark, Doug Gilmore type, Darcy Tucker type players. And then they fall in love with this guy who's just like, hey, bud. Hi, guy. How's it going, bud? Nice save, bud. Hey, thanks for blocking that, bud. And then he comes in after the game, does the interview.
I am Groot.
I don't know, man. You needed a change of mentality in net. I can't take grown men seriously where they have such anger problems that they have to be like it when you were talking to Jack Campbell after the game, I don't know, man. It is what it is. So yeah, looking around the league, there are probably somewhere between 6 to 10 really great goaltenders. The two at the top being elite in Shesterkin and Vasilevsky, and there's just isn't 32 goalies to go around. So the Leafs and teams like Colorado who signed Georgiev, there is you know this appetite to analyze goalies, look at their advanced stats, and see in what situations are they really successful. And Colorado looked at Georgiev, traded for him, signed him. They think that, being on that team and in certain situations, he's going to thrive. And I think the Leafs did the same thing. There just isn't 32 goalies to go around. Like the NHL used to have tons of great goalies. Price has fallen off, and you know Hart in Philadelphia was supposed to be an elite goaltender, and he hasn't hit his stride. And like there are there and Hellebuck fell off last year. Like there is scoring is up in the NHL and people are high flying. Defensemen are going end to end. You look at Cale Makar, you look like Quinn Hughes, Morgan Riley. People are not playing defense as much. It's not a really a defensive league. You know, the whole era of trapping and all these things. There are teams that still try to trap, but you know, it's because it's turning into a wide open league. So you're just looking for a guy to go in there and be consistent, give you a chance to win, and and I think that's what teams like Colorado, um, I mean, there's just been a lot of goalie movement, you know, based on, I think, let me look here, based on the position of goaltending. So Jake Ottinger's re-signed to Dallas. Buffalo's got a young goalie, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who's supposed to be really good. Anaheim still has Gibson. Vitek Vanacek left Washington, is now in New Jersey. Capo Caco is in San Jose. Uh, Aaron Dell moved. Anton Biebel moved. Darcy Kemper is in Washington. Martin Jones, Seattle. Jack Campbell in Edmonton. Calvin Pickard, Charlie Lindgren. Samsonov's in Toronto. You got Yarrow Halak in New York. Thomas Grice in St. Louis. There's a lot of goalies moving around, but when you look at this list, you know, there Georgiev in Colorado, Maxim Legacy in Tampa, you know, like Ville Husso went to Detroit, Marc-Andre Fleury re-signed in Minnesota. He would have been interesting when that whole Marc-Andre Fleury thing came down to Toronto and Minnesota, and it was between those two teams. That was a really interesting situation. I would love to see what Marc-Andre Fleury was capable of in Toronto. I think he was I think he could have put up some really great numbers in Toronto, and Minnesota really fucked up. They when they signed and pissed off Talbot, um like Marc-Andre Fleury is 37 years old. You chose to re-sign him to piss off your number one goalie, and you end up breaking up that tandem, and now Marc-Andre Fleury, who was promised a tandem and less games, now has to go out there and play more games because your number one goalie is pissed off and left. Like Minnesota is not doing business properly, but at the end of the day, I would have really loved to see him come to Toronto and, you know, like a Marc-Andre Fleury and a Samsonov combination would have been really great for Toronto. I don't think people realize like how thin it like the narrative changes so quick. Like it's such a razor thin line. You look at John Tavares, a lot of people talk bad about him in Toronto and they want him traded, such a bad contract. But if he scores with 8 seconds left in the second period and the Leafs go up 3-2, if they just play good in the third period, 12 minutes in, Tampa starts getting desperate. Maybe they take out their goalie early. You get an empty netter and it's game over. You put away the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first round, and he becomes the captain who scored the game winning goal in one of the most important games and gets the Leafs to the second round for the first time in a long time. Imagine how big of a hero John Tavares would be in Toronto right now. And the narrative around his contract being bad and he can't score and blah, blah, he's dropped off, but he's a point a game and he still scores 30 goals. The narrative, like such a razor thin line where that narrative goes to John Tavares being the biggest hero. Toronto boy comes, takes the team to the next, takes the Leafs to the next step. Like that narrative is so razor thin, where you're talking about him being a bad contract. Can we move it? Do whatever? Maybe he's past his prime, and then all of a sudden, He scores that game-winning goal. The Leafs go to the second round, and the narrative changes that quick. So that's what I was thinking about when I was thinking about the Marc-Andre Fleury situation. There was rumors that he was down to Toronto or Minnesota, and I think the reason why he chose Minnesota is because he played with Talbot last year. He saw what that tandem was like. He saw the success that they had. He knew how many games he was going to play. The support was there. In Toronto, that picture was unclear because you couldn't re-sign Campbell. You had Eric Shalgren. You didn't have Matt Murray or Ilya Samsonov at the time. So I think the picture was a little less unclear for Marc Andre Fleury in Toronto, and I think he didn't know how many games he was going to play and things like that. But now that they were able to just sign Samsonov to 1.8, like it would have been great to see what that tandem of Marc Andre Fleury and Ilya Samsonov. But look at this list of all these goalies that signed contracts in the last couple of months. There's no elite names on here. And that's where the Leafs are at. If you want an elite goaltender, you have to go out and trade and get a John Gibson or whatever, but you're looking at a high price. You have to subtract a major piece. And that's why it's understandable. It's not I don't necessarily agree with trading for Matt Murray. I like Ilya Samsonov. He's young, he's got potential. But at the end of the day, what was available out there? There was nothing available, and you definitely could not run it back with Jack Campbell at $5 million. He's 30 years old. He's never been a number one. He's unproven. You can't hitch your wagon to that. You can't be an unproven 30-year-old. You can look at a Matt Murray and say, he's whatever age, but he's got two Stanley Cups. He's been in the playoffs. He's seen what that pressure is like, and at least he was able to thrive in it. Even though he might, God knows whether he could still thrive in that position now, but he's been there and done it. And been there and done it is always going to be worth more than a never was. Jack Campbell, he's 30 years old and no NHL team ever thought to give him a chance. And now he's 5x5 in Edmonton. Edmonton, you screwed up. Mike Smith might have given up a goal from the other side of the rink in the playoffs, but he still put up better stats and got you farther than Jack Campbell got the Leafs. Now, all things considered, the Edmonton Oilers played the LA Kings in the first round, and the Leafs played the Tampa Bay Lightning. Obviously, the Oilers played the easier team, but at the end of the day, Mike Smith got you farther than Jack Campbell got the Leafs. Why you would go pay one more than two times what Mike Smith is making to replace him? Why? Why would Jack Campbell be the guy to replace Mike Smith who got you multiple rounds? Mike Smith took you past LA and took you past Calgary, the Battle of Alberta. What did Jack Campbell do the last 2 years? Cough up 3-1, cough up 3-2. And I mean cough up 3-1 against Montreal. Like some of the worst goals. Go look at the highlights from those games. Paul Byron scores from his knees, off balance, top corner, because the goalie has no idea what he's doing in net. Jack Campbell never makes the same save twice the same way. He's a hybrid stand-up goalie that plays small as a 6'4" person. You should be making yourself look big in net. Jack Campbell makes himself look small in net. He never makes the same save twice the same way. You could take a slap shot from the same place twice. One time he'll blocker it. One time he'll completely, do one of these like one knee down move, like road goalie saves. That's there's no consistency in that. I didn't like Jack Campbell from day one. I've always been a Freddie Anderson guy. He just won a Jennings. It says he won his second Jennings last year and was nominated for a Vesna. That's the guy that you gave up on and decided to take on Jack Campbell. Now where are you at? Leaf fans love to get rid of everybody, but don't understand what pedigree is. Freddie Anderson has goaltending pedigree. Jack Campbell has no pedigree. He is not a good goalie. And the Edmonton Oilers fans are going to learn that this season. And Leaf fans are going to see they're going to get more consistent goaltending from Samsonov and Matt Murray. And Leafs defense is, we're going to get a full season of Geo, which is great. The top guys are the top guys. Matthews, great season, voted the best player in the NHL by the Hockey Writers Association and his peers. So, you know, it is what it is. If you don't like that title, if you're an Edmonton Oilers fan who think only your guy is your best player in the NHL, then you need to take it up with the Hockey Writers Association. But yeah, episode 1, season 3, we are in it. It's September. Training camp is going to be opening real soon. Lots of updates coming. I'm going to make a hype video for this season. I made one last year and I got a lot of views. So we're going to do a pump up video for this season. I already got tickets to the last preseason game on October 8th. October 8th? Yeah, I think it's October 8th. I'm in the swing of things. I took some time. I took a lot of time off this summer. Then do a lot of posting and hockey content just to get away from it a little bit. It was quite toxic after the season ended. But I'm rejuvenated. I'm excited. I like what the Leafs are. I like where the Leafs are going. I like what the Leafs are doing. So you guys, let me know your thoughts. There's still a lot of free agents out there. I don't know if you guys know this, but when I'm looking at the free agent list, like PK Subban, Louis Eriksson, Anton Strawman, Danny DeKaiser, Calvin DeHaan just signed with Carolina. DeKaiser signed with Vancouver. Victor Rask is still out there. Anton Roussel, Jay Beagle, Cody Eakin, Zach Aston Reese. That's the kind of guy I would like as a depth piece in Toronto. But like, there's a lot of guys out there. A lot of young players. Brett Ritchie. We're not bringing him back. Keith Yandel, Tyler Ennis. Yeah. There's a lot of guys out there. And I think some PTO information is gonna start trickling out in the next couple of weeks. And it's gonna be interesting what happens there. Like PK Subban and Louis Eriksson, Anton Strawman, those are three guys that should definitely be playing in the NHL next year. Probably on PTOs, but I don't know if PK Subban is going to be like, I made $9 million and now I'm playing for $900,000. Like, I don't think his pride at 33 is going to allow him to do that. But where he's at right now, the NHL is pretty much telling him, we don't think you can play. But you got to bring your number down. You got to bring your AAV down and play good games to get value. You can't be a $9 million guy scoring 22 points. So I know the money, everybody wants the money, but soon as the money goes above a certain number, the narrative changes. You can't, you know, to be a popular guy in the NHL, look at JT Miller. His stock went up because he plays well, he plays hard, he does everything correct. He gets the fans hyped. And he was in that 5 million range, but then all of a sudden his new contract kicks in. Soon as he has a 50-point season, they're gonna be on him. And Vancouver, I don't know. I don't know, Vancouver. You still got a captain to sign. And then you gave this guy what, $8 million? I don't know, man. I don't know how you can turn your captain's request, his contract down, and then just go and give JT Miller that much money. It's Bo Horvat must be pissed. But yeah, it's cap hell for Vancouver. And I think Edmonton Oilers put themselves in that situation too. I think you know, signing Hyman late into his 30s and Jack Campbell late into his 30s, these are contracts you won't be able to move. So I don't know what's going to happen if they can't win. But yeah, we're back into it. Episode 1, season 3. We're in it. We're back. Let's get it. Let's go, Leaf fans.